Welcome to Scrub In, a podcast powered by Bayhealth. I am your host, Sarah Beebe.
And I am your co-host, Tyler Cody.
Thank you for joining us as we ask ourselves to scrub in
and talk more about our why behind the healthcare mission.
Tyler, welcome back. We are in our seventh episode of
already.
Scrub In, a podcast powered by Bayhealth. So what have you been up to? It's been a month since we recorded the last time. What have you been up to?
Yes, so we just had a holiday, so that was a lot of fun spending time with family and friends. And it was very difficult to come back to work, but after a holiday, you kind of need to dive back in and catch up on everything that you missed. So it's just been a catch-up week for me.
Awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In the Sim Center, we are getting ready for a bunch of end of the year mock code, check the box kind of activities. So we've got pediatric codes going on every day in the Sim Center, which is a lot of fun. And I've just transferred one of our rooms over to look like one of our trauma bays. Okay. So that's been fun to put up all the equipment and everything to make it look like one of our trauma rooms. And
awesome. That's really cool. I'm actually going to be on board with some of the mock codes next year, so I'm super excited to get involved with that.
Yeah, I think you're helping with the cardiac one.
Yes.
We're doing a resternotomy. So we have a fake sternum, and we're making the ribs, and I think 3D printing is somehow involved. And so we're going to actually use our cut suit, which is a suit that can have surgery done to it, and the nurses and doctors are going to be able to practice what would happen if we needed to do a bedside, like a surgery basically at the bedside where you cut the chest back open. So
it's amazing, like the capabilities that you have in the Sim Center to be able to really dive into real life scenarios and the technology that you use. It's very impressive.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's always a blast.
Sometimes I was making fake medications this week, and somebody said, "Now, are you using your PhD for this?" And I was like, "Yeah, but it's a craft project. It's a lot of fun."
Yes.
When you make fake propofol, which is a white medication, and it's just sterile water, and you've somehow made it look like propofol, it's really exciting.
Oh, wow. I'd like to know how you do that.
Yes. Our guest today, we're going to dive in with Dominic Kayatta. He is our Senior Director of Patient Experience at Bayhealth. And so we're going to talk to him about communication. And I'm so excited because he does a lot of coaching in this area. And
he does. Yeah. I've had the privilege of listening to some of his presentations, and boy, can he present.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
And he has a podcast himself.
He does.
We are fellow podcasters.
We will have to learn more about that today.
Yes. We're going to start with our quote. And so the quote today is, "The art of communication is the language of leadership." And that was James Humes.
James Humes.
So we're going to dive in with Dominic. So welcome.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. Thank you. This is an honor and a privilege to be chosen to do this. So
yeah,
here we are. Joining us.
So tell us about yourself.
Well, as I like to say, my background is actually in behavioral health. I was a psychotherapist for a whole bunch of years, working with just about any population out there, kids, adults, marriage counseling, addictions work. So that really gave me my training, my foundation, my training ground, really in this whole art of communication, because that's where I saw where people kind of got stuck, if you will, and where the issues started to rise. From there, then kind of pivoted, and in parts of my job, I always got involved for some reason. I know this is hard to believe because I'm really shy, if you couldn't tell, in the new employee orientation, training and development, and running programs. So that got incorporated in all parts of my job, and I just said, wow, this is kind of cool. People do this for a living. And I said, let's pursue this a little bit more. And then when value-based purchasing became the hot ticket item and reimbursement got tied to the whole patient experience, already having an extensive experience in healthcare, I was tapped to work on several projects and again thought, wow, people do this patient experience stuff for a living. I got to check that out. And here we are today as a result.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So were you doing psychotherapy inpatient? And that's what got you involved in hospital orientation, or had that?
No, that was kind of separate, but as part of all the organizations that I belonged to, people saw my interest and passion for that work and included me in all kind of like new employee orientation programs based on the organization that I was affiliated with at the time.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And you also you have a coaching and consulting business as well.
That is correct.
And what do you do for that?
Yeah. So I became a certified professional coach going on 15 years ago. Again, another one of those, people do this for a living full time. So that got me really interested because as part of all the work, both from a training and organizational development, that's where coaching really started to gain a lot of traction. And there was a need for it at the organization I was working at the time. So luckily I took advantage of that benefit. They paid for my certification, training, and travel and all that. And then I became an internal coach for that organization at the time, as well as trained others. So we took a coaching model as part of our leadership development and with our human resources to have more of that coaching conversation instead of the traditional kind of management and leadership and chain of command and all that stuff. It was more of a partnership. So as part of that, I do both internal coaching as well as external coaching, and as already alluded to, then also started my own podcast.
Yeah, so tell us about your podcast.
We're dying to hear about
this little crossover episode that we've got going here.
Yes, yeah, I love it. There's going to be a lot of publicity for this on many social medias, so I'm excited to hype this one. So it's called Live from the Blue Room, and as I discussed in my premiere episode, when we moved in with our children in our current house, I have twins that are now 23 years old. We decided to move when they were 9 months old. I highly do not recommend that with twins. That
No.
was pretty crazy. But we got through that.
A lot of planning.
A lot of
involved with that.
planning, A lot of planning, interrupting of schedules
Yes.
and bedrooms and things like that.
Yep.
But the house that we really wanted was perfect in the neighborhood that we had been scouting out. But as part of it, they had an addition built, but it was only a 2-season room. And the first thing that lit up for me and kind of the first project was going to make that into a 4-season room. And I looked into the future. Many great memories were going to be built into this room. And as I say, as part of my coaching work, I've looked into your futures and I see great things for you. And why we call it the Blue Room is very creative, very scientific. The carpet's blue in there.
Got it.
It took a genius to come up with that one. So that's got the title because of those great memories, as well as I'll see clients in there from time to time now as well, now that the kids are older.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Very nice.
Well, I have listened to a couple of your episodes, and so
Thank you.
it's great that we get to cross over and talk to you in a different way. So yeah.
Cool.
Now, one of the focuses of our podcast is to kind of get to why you do what you do and what got you there. And so what would you say your why is?
Yeah, and I see the connection with, regardless of the population or the organization or the industry that I'm working with, my why, what gets me up in the morning is really to create the environment and the space where people can bring their whole self to that interaction, be it a relationship, be it somebody that you just might meet on the street, a commitment in the community, and of course work. Because we know when we allow people to bring their whole self, we're going to get the best out of them. And be able, especially in healthcare, we know it's so important to understand what makes that person tick. Just don't treat the disease or the organ, because we know it's all connected at the end of the day. So we find out what's important to them, what they value, what are their expectations, what are they scared about with this new diagnosis. And once we connect at that level, now we've made a truly human-to-human connection. On the workforce side, same thing. Why did you get into this career? What are you hoping to get out of it? What are next steps? What are some of the obstacles? And again, once you connect at that level, people can bring their best and role model that for our patients and families. So that's what gets me up. I get excited about that. kind of as part of my daily routine, I'll meditate about that at night, where I look at those opportunities where I try to provide that space, and any lessons that I learned about myself or anything I could have done differently, or if I have to do some service recovery because a conversation didn't go as well as I hoped or I was distracted, then I'll try to figure out a best plan to reconnect with that person and say, hey, I was off base yesterday. I wasn't engaged. First of all, I want to apologize. Now, can we do take two? Because I'm really interested in what you have to say.
Yeah. I think your introspection and your self-awareness is something that we could all learn from. Because a lot of us, we're not as good as looking inward.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I like, I like the idea of you going home and thinking about your day and meditating on that and realizing that there might have been an opportunity to improve on, or, because we often walk away from a conversation and go, oh my gosh, why did I say that? What was I thinking?
all the time.
But then we don't go back because we're probably too afraid. I'm guessing it's because
Yeah.
we're afraid of going back. Is that what you found? What do you tell people when they need to do that service recovery?
Yeah. So it's to start, what were the messages you were telling yourself about that interaction? Mm-hmm. And as part of my coaching motto, I talk about Albert Ellis's 12 irrational beliefs. And a lot of time it's based on fear. Or how am I going to be perceived? Or they're going to think less of me. The old imposter syndrome. So there's no way I can be that vulnerable and go back to me because they're not going to look at me in the same way or respect me or take my word, as, kind of the gospel, and they're going to view me differently. And then I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of respect. And all fill in the blank. And that's what I think people get stuck about, going back to that instead of role modeling vulnerability, because then the other person, believe it or not, and a big part of my practice is mindfulness. And what we talk about mindfulness is the shared human experience. And we've all had those feelings, but we keep them to ourselves, right? Because we're going to be looked as less than credible, less, not worthy of love. But once we let go of that and role model that as leaders, that it's okay. We're not going to get it right every time. I screwed up. Can you forgive me? What can we do differently moving forward? Then you actually give permission for others to do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's that human-to-human connection
Yeah.
that we're talking about.
We, in the simulation world, we follow a set of standards. And one of the standards of in simulation is that we do a pre-brief. That's what it's called. But in that pre-brief, those moments before you start a simulation or a training, you prepare everybody for the pitfalls.
Yes.
You set it out in the out front. So you say, I know that you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I know that you came with the best intentions in mind. We call that the basic assumption. We put all that on the table. We have it posted on all of our walls and on the doors. But part of the reason is because we want people to know that we need you to ask questions.
That's
we
right.
need you to make that mistake. We need you to fall forward. And what I have found by doing that is it breaks down that barrier of, oh gosh, I'm so afraid of what people are going to think, and I don't, I want to perform, and
That's right.
we let go of all of that. And in fact, I often use that as an opportunity to point when I recognize that in somebody, I'll say, hey, I can see that you're holding back.
Right.
Tell me what you're thinking. And it's really cool to get the feedback on that, because we find that that everybody feels so much more comfortable once they do start breaking down that barrier. And
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So many analogies for all parts of our life, but giving permission to just be yourself, and you might screw up, and that's okay, because that's what we're going to learn.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy you set everybody up for an environment where they can bring all of those things to the equation for ultimate learning and performance.
Yeah.
It's so important as learners to be able to make mistakes in that safe environment.
Yeah.
And I think it truly enhances the learning experience when you know that it's okay if you messed up, because you'll learn from that mess up, and then you improve your skills.
And one thing that I found when I was in school, I did take a number of courses on social cognition, and a lot of the studies that we read were about kind of your awareness with the people around you and how aware the people around you were of you. And whether you like it or not, people aren't paying attention to you as much as you think they are.
That's right. Yes.
And which, as a kid, I remember thinking, everybody's going to laugh at me. Everybody's going to laugh. But you still have that inside, even as an adult.
You
and
always feel like there's a spotlight on us somewhere.
Yes,
exactly.
and we don't actually have that spotlight.
Nope.
People don't.
So it's okay to
Doing
come
their own
back
thing.
and apologize. And I love the way that you really reflect on that at the end of the day, and then come back the next day and try to recover that, which is awesome. I don't think enough people do that. So awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so now, what kind of work are you doing at our organization right now for coaching with communication and things like that?
Yeah, so again, I just try to take that approach with everybody that I talk to. And again, first of all, get in touch with what they were thinking. What were the messages they were telling themselves during that interaction? Be it with a patient, be it with a coworker, be it with a vendor, be it with a volunteer. Kind of first of all, as I do my mindful practices, I start all my classes with that. I ask a certain question in the middle of that mindful exercise or mindful moment that I do. What's the intention that you have for yourself at this moment, and what's the intention you have for the other people in the room? And I think that's really where I get people just to pause and say, okay, what was your intention in that interaction or that class that you were running or that meeting? Were you clear on that? And then what was important to the other person? And was it that mutual understanding? Because that's where I see, especially when you talk about the patient experience, it's that all those assumptions we make that, oh, this is what the patient must be going through, so this is how I'm going to treat them. Instead of just really pausing at the first time or every bedside shift report or every leader rounding, what's most important to you today? What are you most concerned about? So I see that as the heart of communication, and then to break that down even further, all good communication, I think right away people think is, how am I come across? Am I talking? Am I saying the right words? And I want people to flip that as, how much am I really listening? How present am I as the foundation for all great communication, which then makes us a great leader. And you've probably heard that where you see people on their team member employee engagement, where those key leaders kind of rise to the top. The themes are consistent. They're a great listener. They're always present for me. They understand where I'm coming from. And that's where I see as the heart of leadership, is that communication, very specific to just listening.
Yes. And I think that empathy, too, is something that really enhances communication. I know that in my practice in the ICU, a lot of people are in very dire situations, dire straits, if you will.
Right.
And being able to put yourself in that person's shoes and pretend like you are the one in the bed currently. It helps me communicate on a different level that I necessarily wouldn't be able to do if I hadn't had that understanding of that person. So I think that that's something that really helps with communication, is to be able to try on a different pair of shoes.
There you go. Thank you for bringing that up.
And that's a question I had, because I was thinking about Tyler being in the ICU. What do you do for the patients who can't speak? So the ones that are intubated, the ones that are in the ICU and are so sick that you can't ask them what they want. How do you give them the best experience?
Yeah, so that's where the families come in.
Yes.
And really finding out what is most important to that person. First of all, what did they do outside of the hospital? What were they like before this injury or this, whatever, to really tap on what is most important to them. And even though they can't communicate back, incorporate that as you are, as I love to say, narrating your care, right? As you're doing that, oh, I understand, Mr. Smith, that you were an engineer before. That must have been an amazing job. And just by connecting at that level, even though they can't communicate back, that's how you demonstrate that empathy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, at the end of the day. For me, it was the classic story of 2 organizations ago. I was head of patient advocacy. We called it patient relations there. And headed into work, it's 5:55. I know I looked at the clock and already my phone's blowing up. And I said, this is going to be a fun day. And it was the nurse manager for the OR. And she said, Dominic, you got to get up here. We got this family around the table and they're not willing to give consent to operate on their their wife slash mother, and she's got to have this operation on her heart or she's not going to make it. So I said, okay, I'm going to be right in there. And I said, by the way, who's the surgeon? And, she mentioned the name, and I was just like, oh my gosh, here we go. This is not going to go well. So I hustle up, I park my car. I don't even remember parking the car, just ran up there, went to the conference room. One side of the table was the family, the other side was the clinical staff. And then, of course, the surgeon comes busting in, okay, what's going on here? And I was just like, oh, I got to, try to get, a handle on this because this is not going to go well. But then he immediately changed, and he asked the spouse, who was the, power of attorney, medical power of attorney, and said, sir, what do you do for a living? And he goes, I'm a master mechanic. And he goes, what an honorable trade. I know that's nothing I can do. Even though I work on hearts, I know I could never be a mechanic. And he goes, let me tell you what's going on with your wife's heart. And he used the analogy of an engine. And right away, the spouse got it, the husband got it. He goes, what are you guys doing in here? Get the heck in there and operate on my wife, and I'll sign anything you want to do. So it was that moment of connection, finding out where that common ground was, because this was not going to go well. And that surgeon had that presence of mind to really connect with the family at a much deeper level.
Yeah.
And we got a great result, and everybody was happy by the end of the operation.
That's a perfect example of communication going in favor.
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I love that. I was my dad is currently inpatient at a local hospital, and I was sitting by his bedside yesterday, and he has a roommate, and I'm listening to the roommate's family talk, and it was really a moment where I was thinking we need somebody to make some connections here, because they were talking about staffing, and they were making a number of assumptions about why we don't have adequate staffing, why nurses are leaving the bedside. There were lots of comments, and it was really hard to sit quietly because I really wanted to say something.
Yeah, right.
Like, excuse me, I am a nurse. But I was thinking in that moment, this is an opportunity where we need to make a connection.
Yes.
They need to we need to meet them where they're at. And I don't work for that organization, so I couldn't step in as a professional. I was there just as a family member, but I was thinking, this is where there could be a real opportunity. And I think you probably see this regularly, where it could be bad, where the staff hate that family, and that family hate the staff.
Yes.
Or they could take a moment and really come together and find that common ground.
Yes.
And, of course, hindsight and being the fly on the wall in the room, you're thinking, well, why don't we just do this and this? I imagine that you probably see those moments so often that it's like, if we just took a minute and figured out where we connect here, that we all want the best for the patient, or for a family member, or for our staff.
That's right.
And so it's funny that you bring up your story, because I had a very similar experience yesterday. So there are just so many opportunities where the patient experience and the staff experience could be improved.
Absolutely. Because like you said, nobody wants to go in that room. Oh, family's keeping a notebook. I'm not going to get written up. I need my job, right?
Yes.
So there's that hesitation that I'm not going to answer that call bell. But what I'm trying to get across is, nurses all have great guts. Trust your gut that something isn't going right. That's coupled with, I think nurses just have a high work ethic and accountability, that it's their patient for that shift and they think they got to handle everything. No, it's okay to raise your hand and said, I think we need a different level of intervention. We need a different conversation here. Who are the right people to get involved in that? So now I'm not feeling the pressure of handling all this on my shoulders, going in that room and knowing it's going to be a battle and they're going to write my name and everything that I do, and they're going to film me and do all this. So now they're nervous; they can't be themselves and do a great job. And plus the staff, plus the family and the patient are upset at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. No.
And that is when you can use communication as kind of like an endeavor to reach that family on that level and maybe mitigate some of those issues that are going on. Yeah. And that's what I always try to do. It just comes to a matter of talking on a human level.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that topic, it can be so hard to be in healthcare. And so it's important that we all have things that we do outside of the hospital. And so what is it that you find fills up your bucket when you go home? And,
Definitely family, first priority. We were very fortunate that our kids wanted to still hang out with us, moving into middle school, high school, and even now my daughter's in graduate school, so she's still living at home and still wants to have dinner with us. So it's all icing on the cake. It's all good. So that's always been the priority since day one, back in 2000, and very excited that they still want to be associated with us. So that always love to travel. We go on at least one, if not several, cruises a year. So we have one coming up on the 22nd.
Oh, where are you going?
Very excited. So the Caribbean. We go out, out of Fort Lauderdale, and all the islands and countries are running together. But I love all of them. Now.
Oh, that's perfect.
I even though it doesn't show, I love to work out. So I try to get into the gym 4 to 5 days per week, even if it's just to do some cardio. That's kind of my download and my time, just to unwind from the day. Obviously into podcasts, and because I do have a commute coming from Newark, I listen to audiobooks as well as many podcasts, so I go through a lot of books, obviously in that commute. So that's very exciting. And then just, connecting, being with friends. Yeah.
Now, do you use your patient experience skills at home? Do you find that you that your kids and your wife that you communicate perfectly at home?
No, I fail miserably. No, it's funny, and as part of my background in training and development, every class that I would teach at work, they also had to go through all my classes. So they are experts in crucial conversations, in meeting facilitation, and just anything that I would taught, they would go through it. And they loved it. Yeah, so it really, I think, gave them a leg up, because they were in debate, and they were always doing presentations and all that, and they were just like, where did you guys learn all that? My dad. So I'll take a little bit of credit for that.
Sure.
But no, I got a long ways to go, because that's the one thing, sometimes those personal relationships, the expectations. Aren't you just supposed to read my mind and know what I want? We've been together for 30 years. It's starting over every single day.
Yep. But I think that's something common in all of healthcare is that we don't shut it off when we walk. Like, we don't close the computer and walk away. We tend to bring home what we're doing at home, and so I was curious if you you make your kids go through all your classes.
Exactly.
I love it.
You guys are a family of communicators.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, it's been so great talking with you. Is there anything else that you want to add, or anything that we didn't cover?
No, it's just such a privilege. First of all, for this forum, and this venue. It's so cool. I think it'll tap into many people's ways that they learn, get information, and to put out the wonderful things that are happening here at Bayhealth, which I'm so excited to be a part of now for the last 9-10 months. And for both of you, I've listened to all the podcasts, and you just create such a wonderful environment that just brings out the best in all of your guests. So keep up the great work. This is fabulous. And for all the people behind the scenes, because I know it takes a lot to pull off a podcast as well as video it, so I appreciate them as well.
Yes, we love our team. And your podcast again is
Live from the Blue Room.
From the Blue Room.
Available on all platforms. So,
wonderful.
Yep,
well,
thank you.
We will certainly look out for that. And your new season, you're starting season 3 in the new year.
Yes.
And so like and subscribe Live from the Blue Room, as well as Scrub In, powered by Bayhealth. And we thank you so much for coming and visiting with us.
Thank you for joining us, Dominic.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yes.
Join us for our next episode by subscribing to this podcast and telling your friends to do the same.
Click plus or follow so you don't miss an episode. Don't forget to keep up with us all on social media channels by following @Bayhealth.
And remember, there is a why behind every healthcare uniform.